"You can move your wedding, Addie. I can't move a baby." She said it casually, like we were talking about dinner reservations. 6 weeks before I was supposed to walk down the aisle, I remember just staring at her through the phone, waiting for the part where she laughed and said she was kidding. She didn't. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a door closing somewhere deep in the house. My name is Adeline Farrow. I'm 28, and if you'd asked anyone in my family who mattered more, they wouldn't have hesitated. It was always my sister Colette, not because she was kinder, not because she worked harder, but because she married better. If you walked into our parents' house in Glastonbury, you'd think everything was perfect. White walls, fresh flowers, the kind of place that always smells like something just got baked, even when nothing did. My dad had been a bank manager for over 3 decades, predictable, steady, proud of being predictable. My mom hosted book clubs and knew exactly which wine to serve with what, and Colette, she was the crown jewel. 5 years ago, she married Brett Whitfield, real estate money, the kind that comes with country clubs and cars that still smell new 6 months later, the kind that quietly pays your parents' mortgage without ever saying it out loud. After that, everything changed. Not suddenly, but noticeably. My mom started calling Colette before she made any decisions. My dad laughed louder at Brett's jokes than anyone else's. And somewhere along the way, I became background noise. I didn't hate my sister for it. I hated how easy it was for everyone else to forget I existed. I met Marcus 3 years ago at an art fair in New Haven. He was standing in front of one of his own paintings, arms crossed, frowning at it like it had personally offended him. It was this quiet kind of frustration, the kind that only shows up when someone actually cares. I laughed. He turned, caught me staring, and instead of getting embarrassed, he just said, "What's wrong with it?" No introduction, no small talk, just that. I stepped closer, looked at the painting again, and said, "The light's too cold." He blinked once, then nodded. "Yeah, it is." That was it. That's how it started. Marcus wasn't the kind of man my family respected. He was a painter. Not hobby painter. Actual, serious, spends 10 hours on a single brushstroke painter. Some months he sold work. Some months we ate pasta 3 nights in a row. But everything he did was real. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was building something honest with someone. Not impressive. Not flashy. Just real. My family didn't see it that way. They saw instability. They saw not a real job. They saw a man who couldn't give me the life Brett gave Colette. And they made sure he knew it. Thanksgiving, 8 months before the wedding. That was the first time I brought Marcus to meet them. Colette arrived late, of course. New Lexus. 2 bottles of wine she made sure everyone knew cost $200 each. I brought a pie I'd baked that morning. No one mentioned it. My mom held Colette's wine like it was something sacred, set it down carefully, complimented it. Didn't even look at what I brought. Dinner started fine. Too fine. The kind of quiet where everyone's being polite, but you can feel something coming. Then my dad leaned forward. That smile he does when he's about to say something he thinks is harmless. "So Marcus," he said, "when are you planning to get a real job?" A couple people chuckled. Brett didn't even try to hide it. Colette tilted her head slightly, watching me instead of him. "At least Adeline found someone," she added softly. Not mean. Just pitying. Like she was giving me credit for trying. Under the table, Marcus reached for my hand. He didn't defend himself, didn't argue, just squeezed my fingers once. That hurt more than anything they said. What none of them knew was that something had already started to change for us. Something quiet. Something important. But at the time, I didn't understand it either. I thought we were just getting by. Our apartment was on the ground floor of this old Victorian house in New Haven. High ceilings, big windows. paint everywhere. And our landlord, Harold, 67, always in the same jacket, always drinking black coffee. He had this habit of just showing up while Marcus worked, standing behind him, watching, not saying much at first, then, every now and then, warm that shadow slightly, push the highlight a little further, and somehow the painting would change instantly, like he saw things other people didn't. One afternoon, he said something I didn't think twice about. "Your work reminds me of someone I used to represent," he told Marcus. "Sold for 6 figures now." I smiled politely, assumed he was just being kind. Around the same time, Marcus mentioned he was working on a piece for a new client, said Harold had introduced him. I didn't ask questions. Didn't think I needed to. We were planning a wedding. That felt like the big thing. In January, Marcus proposed. No big setup, no fancy restaurant. We were lying on the studio floor, surrounded by half-finished canvases, snow falling outside. He just turned his head slightly and said, "Marry me." That was it. No speech, no pressure, just truth. I said yes. Of course I did. We set the date for June 14th. Small garden ceremony. Nothing extravagant. 40-something guests. Wildflowers. An arch Marcus was building himself. I called my parents that weekend, told them everything. There was a pause. Then my dad said, "June 14th. Let me check." Not congratulations. Not I'm happy for you. Just let me check. He called back 2 days later. "I'll be there," he said. "I'll walk you down the aisle. I promise." I held on to that promise like it meant something, like it couldn't break. My mom asked how much it was costing. Didn't ask about the dress. Didn't ask if I was excited. Just numbers. Colette sent a single text. "Congrats. Let me know if you need help." No call, no follow-up, no involvement. And that should have been my first warning, because my sister always has an opinion about everything. Except this time, she said nothing. 3 weeks before the wedding, my aunt called me. And with one question, everything started to fall apart. "Colette's shower?" I was still holding my phone when my aunt repeated herself, slower this time, like maybe I hadn't heard correctly. "Yes, honey. The baby shower, June 14th, at the club in Greenwich." A beat. "Your wedding's the same day, isn't it?" Turquoise paint slid off the end of my brush and hit the kitchen floor. For a second, I honestly thought there had to be some mistake. Wrong date. Wrong sister. Wrong family, maybe. But deep down, before I even hung up, I already knew. I called Colette immediately. She let it ring long enough to make me feel it. Then she answered in that polished voice she uses when she wants to sound innocent. "Oh, Addie, I was going to call you." "No, you weren't." Silence. Then a soft sigh, almost offended. "Brett already booked everything. The venue only had that date." It turned into this whole scheduling nightmare. I didn't say anything, because some lies are so obvious, interrupting them feels insulting to your own intelligence. "My ceremony is at 3, I said finally. "Mystic is nowhere near Greenwich. You know people can't do both." She gave this little laugh. "I mean, if they really wanted to, maybe." That was the moment I stopped hearing her words and started hearing the intention underneath them. She had not stumbled into my wedding date. She had stepped onto it, carefully, on purpose. And when I called Aunt Patricia back, she confirmed the part that made it undeniable. The invitations for Colette's shower had gone out before I even mailed my save the dates. Not after, before. Colette had known exactly what she was doing. When I confronted her again, she didn't even bother trying very hard. "Addie," she said, her voice turning syrupy, "this is my first baby. You can get married whenever. This isn't the same thing." I remember gripping the edge of the counter so hard my hand hurt. Whenever. Like the man I loved was interchangeable. Like vows were just decor, like my life could wait politely until she was done being celebrated. I called my mother first. She answered on the second ring, already sounding tired. "Mom, you knew?" A pause. And in my family, pauses have always told the truth before words do. "Honey, Colette really needs everyone there." My chest went cold. "At my wedding. I need people at my wedding. This is the first grandbaby. I'm your daughter." "I know that." But she didn't say it like she meant it. She said it like it was inconvenient. Then came the sentence that finished whatever hope I still had left in that call. "Couldn't you move it a few weeks?" I laughed once, not because it was funny, because my body didn't know what else to do. "We've paid deposits. Invitations are already out." "Well," she said lightly, "not everybody has to be at everything." Not everybody has to be at everything. I stared at the wall after she said it. My wedding had just been downgraded to a scheduling conflict. I called my father next. He listened, grunted once or twice. Said he'd talk to your mother. That was his favorite trick when he wanted to avoid choosing. He acted like indecision was wisdom. Then he disappeared for 3 days. I texted him, "Are you still walking me down the aisle?" Read, no reply. I called again the next day, then again that night. On the third try, he picked up. "Of course I am," he said. But there was something empty in his voice, not warmth, not certainty, just obligation wearing a father's coat. And I felt it, that awful shift inside you when you realize someone can technically say the right thing while already preparing to betray you. The RSVPs started changing after that, one no after another. Aunt, cousin, uncle, another cousin. By the end of the week, enough had declined that I stopped checking the mailbox right away. I'd leave it there for an hour first, like maybe distance could soften it. It didn't. I didn't call and beg. I need that on record. I asked once. Clearly, directly. And then I paid attention, because silence is information too. Rachel was the one who showed me the rest. She came over after her shift, still wearing scrubs under a zip-up hoodie, dropped her bag by the door and said, "Sit down. You need to see this now." Years ago, my mom had added her to the family group chat during one of her include Adeline's friends phases, and then apparently forgot she was there. Rachel never forgot anything. She handed me her phone. Colette hadn't just announced the shower in general. She'd worked each person separately, different angle for each target. To my mother, guilt. To my aunt, embarrassment. To other relatives, appearances, logistics, family unity. To my father. Rachel scrolled lower. There it was. A message from Colette, dropped into the chat like it was nothing. "Adeline will get over it. She's used to disappointment." I read it twice. Then a third time. Not because I didn't understand it, because I did. Too well. My own sister knew exactly where to put the knife. Rachel sat beside me on the couch. "There's more." And there was. The money. Not just gifts. Not just favors. Leverage. Brett covering the mortgage. Brett paying for things my parents could no longer comfortably afford. Brett making their life easier in ways nobody wanted to admit out loud. That was the real center of gravity. Not love, not loyalty. Dependency. Nobody had to say, choose Colette or lose the lifestyle. It was already understood. Rachel showed me one last screenshot. Colette again. This time, dismissing my wedding like it was some embarrassing little craft project. Small, forgettable, barely worth showing up for. I set the phone down. Marcus was at the work table cleaning brushes when I walked over to him later that night. He looked up once and knew. I could tell by his face. "We don't need them there to make it real," he said quietly. Then after a second, softer, "But I know why you wanted your dad." I looked past him at a canvas leaning against the wall. A single chair in an empty room, light spilling over one side of it. I wrote one last message that night. No pleading, No accusation, just the date, the time, the location, and one simple line at the end. I hope to see you there. I sent it to every family member invited. No one answered. The next morning, Rachel called from Chicago. I booked a flight, she said. I'm coming. I thanked her, but after we hung up, I stood in the middle of the apartment and looked at the dress in the closet. The flowers we'd already ordered, the seating chart, the careful little life Marcus and I had been building by hand. And for the first time, I understood exactly how alone I might be when the day finally came. I stopped checking my phone the night before, not because I didn't care anymore, because I already knew what it would say. The morning of June 14th started quietly, too quietly. Rachel was sitting on the bathroom counter with one leg tucked under her, holding a mascara wand like it was surgical equipment. Don't blink, she said. I'm not blinking. You're thinking about blinking. I'm not, Addie. I exhaled and went still. She leaned in, steady, precise. The kind of focus you get from someone who works in an ER and has seen worse things than a wedding meltdown. My dress was hanging on the closet door behind me. Vintage lace, ivory, something I'd found in a consignment shop and somehow turned into a wedding dress with the help of a seamstress who charged me less than it was worth. My bouquet sat in the kitchen in a mason jar, lavender and white peonies. Simple. Everything about the day was simple. Everything except the silence. My phone buzzed, just once. I didn't look at it right away. Rachel did. She didn't say anything, but I saw the way her eyes flicked up to meet mine in the mirror. Who is it? I asked. She hesitated. Your dad. Of course it was. I picked it up. Hi. There was a pause on the other end. Not a long one, but long enough for me to feel it. Adeline, he started, and something in his voice was already wrong, like he'd practiced this. I don't really know how to say this. I closed my eyes. Then just say it. Well, your mother and I were looking at the timing, and with Colette's event starting at noon and the drive, Dad, I don't think we can make it in time for your ceremony. The words landed exactly how I expected them to. Still hurt. Still sharp. Just not surprising anymore. I looked at my reflection while he kept talking. At the dress, at Rachel standing behind me, completely still now. At my own face, somehow calm. You promised, I said. I know, sweetheart, I did, and I'm sorry, but this is Colette's first baby. There will be other... No. My voice didn't rise. It didn't shake. It just cut through. There won't. Silence. The kind that says more than anything else. This is my only wedding day, I said. I don't get another one. He sighed like I was making something difficult. Don't make this harder than it has to be. That sentence, that exact sentence. I don't know why that was the one that did it, but it was. I pulled the phone away from my ear and ended the call before he could say anything else. Then I set it face down on the counter. My hands were trembling, but my eyes stayed dry. Rachel didn't say anything. She just picked the mascara back up and finished what she started. Like this was just another thing we had to get through. And somehow, that helped more than anything anyone could have said. An hour later, she checked Instagram. She turned the phone toward me without a word. Pink balloons, gold decorations, tables being set. A caption about family and gratitude. Posted hours before the event even started. I stared at it for a few seconds, then handed the phone back. That was it. No breakdown, no scene, just clarity. Like the last thread had finally snapped. The venue was exactly how I'd imagined it. A small garden behind an inn, overlooking water that caught the light just right in the afternoon. Marcus had built the arch himself, wood he'd sanded down, shaped by hand, wrapped with greenery and soft white ribbon. It was beautiful. Everything was, from a distance. Up close, it was something else. 42 chairs, all arranged perfectly, all facing forward, most of them empty. 7 people. That's how many actually came. Marcus, Rachel, 2 of his friends from art school, 2 of mine who had driven up from New York, and Harold. The wind moved through the rows, brushing the lavender tied to the backs of the chairs. It made this soft sound, like something trying to fill the space. It didn't. I stood at the start of the aisle, holding my bouquet. There was no one beside me, no hand to take, no voice telling me it was time, just the sound of the violin starting somewhere ahead. I could see Marcus at the other end, standing still, trying to hold it together. Even from that distance, I could tell his eyes were already red. Rachel stepped closer to me. "I can walk you," she said quietly. I shook my head. "You're my maid of honor. You stay with him." She didn't argue. She just squeezed my arm once and stepped back. I turned forward, looked down the aisle, at the empty chairs, at the people who weren't there, at everything that was supposed to be different. I took a breath and lifted my foot. "Hold on." The voice came from behind me, low, steady, not rushed. I turned. Harold was standing a few feet away, not in his usual jacket, a suit, dark, clean, worn like it meant something to him. He adjusted his cuffs slightly, almost self-conscious, then looked at me. "I might be overdressed," he said, a small smile tugging at one corner of his mouth. "But I figured this was the kind of day that deserved it." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. He stepped closer, slower now, more deliberate. Then he held out his arm. "If you don't mind," he said, "I'd be honored." Something in my chest cracked open. Not painfully, not like before, more like something letting light in for the first time. "You don't have to do this," I managed. "I know," he said. "I want to." A beat. "Your father should be here," he added quietly. "But since he isn't, someone who actually values you should be." I looked at him, really looked, at the man who brought us tomatoes in the summer, who stood behind Marcus while he painted, who never said too much, but somehow always said the right thing. And I realized something I hadn't fully seen before. He had been paying attention. He had been showing up. I slipped my hand into the crook of his arm, and together, we walked. Everyone stood as we moved down the aisle, all 7 of them. Rachel was crying openly now. Marcus pressed his hand to his mouth like he was trying to keep himself steady. The music carried over the water. The sunlight hit the chairs. The empty ones didn't matter as much as they had 5 minutes ago. The ceremony itself was short, simple. We said our vows. Marcus had written his on a piece of canvas. I'd written mine on the back of one of my drawings. We both cried. We both laughed. And when it was over, those 7 people clapped like it was a room full of hundreds. Afterward, we stayed in the same garden. No big reception. No formal anything. Pizza boxes on a table. Wine Rachel had brought. Music playing through a small speaker. We danced barefoot on the grass as the light started to fade. It wasn't what I thought my wedding would look like. But it was real. And for a few hours, that was enough. Later, after the music slowed down and people started packing things away, I sat down in one of the empty chairs, the same ones that had felt so heavy earlier. My phone was still in my hand. I unlocked it. No messages. Not one. No sorry, no thinking of you, nothing. Like the day hadn't happened. Like I hadn't. I shouldn't have opened Instagram, but I did. 14 new posts from Colette. Champagne glasses, gift tables, laughter. My family, all of them. My father standing next to her, smiling, his hand resting on her stomach like that was the moment that mattered. The caption read something about love, about family, about being surrounded by the people who show up. I stared at it for a long time, then zoomed in. Faces I recognized, people who had said no, people who had chosen. And then, in the background of one photo, something caught my eye. Brett turned away, phone pressed to his ear. His expression tight, not celebratory, not relaxed, something else. I frowned slightly. It didn't make sense, but I didn't think about it long. Not yet. That night, back in the apartment, Marcus and I lay side by side in silence. The smell of lavender filled the room. He reached for my hand. "I wouldn't trade today," he said softly. "For anything." I turned my head toward him. "I keep thinking, maybe if I had tried harder." "You tried enough." His voice was gentle, final, like a door closing. I swallowed, then whispered, "You deserved better." He shook his head. "I got you." A pause. "That's better than anything they could have given us." I didn't cry because I was broken. I cried because I was tired. What I didn't know, lying there in that quiet room, was that something had already been set in motion. Something Marcus hadn't told me. Something Harold had been part of. Something that would change everything. Soon. I stared at the message for a long time before I sent it. Not because I didn't know what to say, because I knew exactly what it meant once I did. "Thank you for your silence. It told me everything your words never could. I won't be reaching out again. If you want to talk, you know where to find me." I read it 3 times, then I pressed send. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't wait for a reply. 2 days later, my mother responded. Not with an apology, not with acknowledgement, just one line. "Adeline, don't be dramatic. We love you." It was just bad timing. Bad timing. I stared at that phrase until it stopped looking like words. Then I muted the conversation. Not out of anger, out of clarity. After that, something shifted in me, quietly, the same way it had the day Colette said I could have a wedding any time. Except this time, it didn't feel like something breaking. It felt like something settling. I stopped waiting. Marcus went back to painting. At first, I thought it was just a way for him to process everything. But then I started noticing patterns. He wasn't painting random pieces anymore. Everything had a theme. A table set for more people than were there. A bench with space left open at one end. A row of chairs, most of them empty. I didn't ask him about it. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what he was painting. One afternoon, Harold came downstairs while Marcus was working. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there with his coffee, watching, longer than usual. There was something different about him that day, more focused, more certain. He stepped closer to one of the canvases, the one with the garden chairs, the one that looked too familiar. He studied it for a long time. Then, without saying a word, he pulled out his phone and sent a message. I noticed. I didn't ask. Something about it felt intentional, like a door opening somewhere I couldn't see yet. Days passed, then weeks, and I stopped expecting anything from my family. No apology, no explanation, nothing. It was peaceful in a strange way. Not happy, but steady. Then one morning, Harold knocked on our door. Not his usual casual knock, not just checking in. This was different. "Do you both have a minute?" he asked. We followed him upstairs. He had 3 mugs on the table, coffee already poured, and a box. Old, worn, heavy. "Sit," he said. I did. Marcus stood for a second longer, then pulled out a chair. Harold opened the box slowly. Inside were catalogs. Art catalogs. Thick, glossy, some worn at the edges. I picked one up. The name on the front caught my eye. Brenton Gallery, New York. I flipped through it, recognized names. Paintings I'd seen before. Not online. In textbooks. In museums. I looked up at Harold. He didn't smile. Didn't soften it. Just said it plainly. I ran that gallery for 22 years. Silence. Marcus leaned forward slightly. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. I represented over 40 artists, Harold continued. Several of them are now in permanent collections. I stared at him, at the man who brought us tomatoes in the summer, who wore the same jacket every day, who charged us rent so low it didn't make sense. You never said anything, I whispered. I didn't need to, he replied. Then he looked at Marcus, really looked at him. I needed to be sure. A pause. I am now. Everything after that moved quickly. Too quickly for my brain to fully catch up. Harold had already sent photos of Marcus's work to someone. Not a small gallery, not a casual contact, a private collector, a serious one. The kind of name that shows up in places most people never reach. The kind of person who doesn't browse. They acquire. Marcus didn't look at me right away. He already knew. I could tell by the way his hands tightened slightly on the table. I was going to tell you, he said quietly. When? After the wedding. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Why? Because I didn't want it to become the reason the day mattered. That hit me harder than anything else had that morning. The first piece had already been sold, just like that, no negotiation, no back and forth. Purchased. A number was mentioned. I thought I misheard it. I didn't. Then came the contract. 12 paintings, a long-term commission, structured payments, legal terms. Everything formal, everything real. Marcus read through it carefully. I watched him. Watched the way he slowed down, line by line, making sure this wasn't something fragile, making sure it wouldn't disappear if he blinked. We drove to New York to sign it. I sat in that office, surrounded by glass walls and quiet voices, reading documents that felt unreal. Not because they weren't legitimate, because they were. Every page confirmed it. This wasn't luck. This wasn't temporary. This was entry. Afterward, we sat outside for a few minutes. Neither of us said anything. Then I looked at him. This is more than my dad made in years, I said quietly. Marcus didn't answer. He just nodded once. Harold stood beside us, calm, unmoved, like this was exactly what he expected. This is only the beginning, he said, and the way he said it made me believe him. We didn't tell anyone, not my family, not anyone. We didn't hide it. We just stopped offering information to people who had already decided what we were worth. A week later, Marcus got a call. He put it on speaker without thinking. A voice came through, smooth, measured, unhurried. The kind of voice that doesn't rush because it never has to. He congratulated Marcus, talked about the work, then casually mentioned something that didn't sound real. A trip, a yacht, Europe. Consider it part of building the relationship, he said. Marcus looked at me. I shook my head instinctively. This is too much, I whispered. He covered the phone. Harold says this is normal. Normal. Nothing about our life had ever included that word before. I hesitated for a long moment. Then something inside me clicked. A memory. 42 chairs, 35 of them empty. My father choosing somewhere else. My sister saying I could just do it another time. All the ways I had made myself smaller, so other people could stay comfortable. Say yes, I said quietly. Marcus nodded, then spoke into the phone. Rachel found out a few days later. Her reaction was exactly what you'd expect. You're telling me, she said, pacing my kitchen, that you got married in a garden with 7 people, and now you're going on a billionaire's yacht? I laughed for the first time in what felt like weeks. They don't know, I said. Your family? Yeah. She stopped pacing, turned to me. Oh, this is going to be interesting. At the same time, small cracks started showing back home. I only heard pieces of it, through my aunt, through passing comments, through silence where there used to be constant noise. Brett's company wasn't doing well. Deals falling through, money tightening. The kind of problems that don't show up all at once, but once they start, they don't stop. Then my mother called. First time since the wedding. Her voice sounded different. Careful. Too careful. Hi, honey. How are you? I leaned against the wall. I'm good. A pause. Well, we were thinking maybe you and Marcus could come for dinner this weekend. Your father made something last Sunday and... I'm busy. Silence. Then a small, controlled exhale. Okay, well, he says hi. The call ended quickly after that. I stood there for a minute, phone still in my hand, and I knew. Not guessed. Knew. The timing wasn't random. It never was. When everything was working for them, I didn't exist. Now that something wasn't, they remembered I was still here. What they didn't know, what none of them knew yet, was that in a few weeks, one single photo was going to change everything. I posted it in under 10 seconds, not because I was trying to make a statement, because I wasn't. It was just a photograph. Marcus behind me, his arms around my waist, the water behind us so blue it almost looked fake. Evening light sliding gold across the deck. A champagne glass on the table. One corner of the gallery catalog visible beside it. That was all. No tagging anyone. No explanations. No dramatic caption. Just honeymoon with my husband. Grateful for the people who showed up. Then I put my phone away and went to sleep. The next morning, I reached for it half awake and immediately sat up. Notifications. So many notifications the screen looked broken. Calls, texts, voicemails, DMs. I kept scrolling, and scrolling, and scrolling. By the time I got to the bottom, my stomach had gone completely still. 417. That was the number. Not 7, not 20. 417 attempts from the same people who had managed absolute silence on my wedding day. I let that sit in my lap for a second. Then I started opening them. Not emotionally, clinically. The way you read something after it's already dead. My father had called more than anyone. Missed calls stacked one after another like panic. Then texts. Whose yacht is this? Why didn't you tell us Marcus was doing this well? Please call me back. That last one almost made me laugh. Not because it was funny, because he hadn't seemed to need me very much when I was standing alone at the end of an aisle. My mother's messages came next. Confusion first, then concern, then pride, suddenly and conveniently discovered. Oh my God, sweetheart, is this Monaco? Are you okay? We're so happy for you. We need to celebrate when you're home. Celebrate. That word made my jaw tighten. She had skipped my wedding and wanted a party for my honeymoon because it looked expensive enough to impress her friends. Colette had fewer messages, but they told me more. Wait, what? Is Marcus actually selling like that? And then, we need to talk. Call me. No apology, no acknowledgement, just calculation in real time. Then the extended family poured in. Aunts, uncles, cousins, people who had sent regrets, people who had sent nothing, people who had vanished completely. So proud of you. We always knew he was talented, knew you two would make it. That one almost offended me the most. Because no, they hadn't. If they had, they would have shown up before the yacht. Then I hit the message I wasn't expecting. Brett. I stared at his name for a second before opening it. Short, polite, almost professional. He wanted to know whether Marcus had gallery representation. Said he might know people who'd be interested.
I read it twice. Brett, who had barely treated Marcus like a serious adult for years, was suddenly networking. That told me everything I needed to know about how fast power shifts when money changes direction.
Marcus found me on the balcony about an hour later. I had my phone turned face down on a table beside me.
He looked at me once and understood enough not to ask for details. "They all woke up," I said.
He leaned against the railing. "That many?"
"More."
He waited. I exhaled. I'm not ready to talk to them, but I'm also not going to let them pretend this is normal. He nodded once. "Then don't." That was one of the things Marcus did best. He never rushed me toward forgiveness just because other people were uncomfortable with consequences. That afternoon, I opened the family chat for the first time since I'd muted it. My hands were steady, which honestly surprised me. I typed slowly, deleted once, started over. Then sent this. "Thank you for reaching out. Marcus and I are doing well. Since many of you seem curious, I'll be direct. Several weeks ago, Marcus signed a major commission with a private collector, and our honeymoon was a gift connected to that work. But I also need to be honest about something else. What happened on June 14th hurt deeply. Dad promised to walk me down the aisle, and didn't come. Mom chose my sister's event over my wedding. Colette scheduled her shower on my wedding day intentionally. I'm not interested in pretending that didn't happen. I need space. If I decide to reconnect, I will do it on my timeline. Please respect that." I read it once after it's sent. Then I put my phone back in the drawer. No one replied for hours. I pictured them reading it in kitchens and living rooms, passing the phone around, each person waiting for someone else to go first. My father called that evening. I let it ring until it stopped. Later that night, Colette posted an Instagram story, a dinner table, candlelight, wine glasses, place settings arranged just right. The caption made my whole body go cold. "Missing one." As if I had drifted away for no reason. As if I were the one who had abandoned something. Some people don't just lie to others. They lie in a way that lets them survive themselves. A few weeks later, the press release went out for Marcus's show. Then the preview started. Then the bigger coverage. And then the one that changed everything. The New York Times ran a feature. There was a photo of Marcus standing beside the central painting from the series. The garden, the arch, the rows of chairs. 42 of them, only 7 occupied. The rest empty in broad daylight, impossible to excuse, impossible to soften. The title was the date of our wedding, and it had already sold. When I saw the article, I didn't feel triumph. I felt stillness. Because there it was. Not family gossip. Not my version, not Colette's version. A record. Beautiful, devastating, public. The article talked about emotional absence, about the tension between intimacy and abandonment, about the precision of personal grief turned into art. They used words like extraordinary. Strangers stood in that gallery and looked at the worst day of my life with tears in their eyes. And for the first time, what happened to me was not being minimized. It was being seen. At the opening, a reporter asked Marcus whether the piece was autobiographical. He didn't hesitate. "Yes," he said. "It was our wedding." That was all it took. By the next morning, the story had spread. Not because we campaigned for it, because truth carries its own momentum once enough people witness it. My mother called first. Her voice sounded wrong. Fragile in a way I'd never heard before. "Your father saw the article." I stayed quiet. He hasn't said much since this morning. I looked out the window. "Mom, Marcus painted what happened." She didn't know what to do with that. Because there's no argument against a thing that is both true and hanging on a gallery wall. Colette reacted differently. Not with regret, with outrage. Her friends had questions now. People in her social circle had connected the names. Connected the date. Connected the obvious gap.
And Colette, who had built her image carefully for years, was suddenly left trying to explain why she wasn't at her own sister's wedding. She couldn't, not convincingly.
Not anymore. Even Brett tried pivoting. He called Marcus directly, suddenly warm, suddenly respectful, talking about potential buyers and contacts. Marcus shut it down, politely. No anger. No speech. Just a clean boundary. That made me love him even more. Then Aunt Patricia sent me a screenshot from the family chat. I wasn't in it anymore, but apparently my absence had not stopped them from talking about me. Colette had written that I was humiliating the family. My father responded underneath it. A single line. Maybe we should have gone to the wedding. I stared at that sentence for a long time. My mother answered right after him, telling him not to start. Even then, even with evidence everywhere, even after the article, no one in that family could quite bring themselves to say the simplest thing. We were wrong. Then the financial collapse finally surfaced in public. A filing, a notice. The kind of thing most people would miss unless they knew where to look. Brett's company had gone into bankruptcy protection. Once that happened, everything else started falling in behind it. The mortgage payment to my parents stopped. My mother's extra card got shut off. Colette started selling pieces of jewelry that had once been displayed like trophies. And then my father called. Not because of the article, not because he missed me, because they might lose the house. His voice sounded thinner than I remembered. Older. He told me he knew he had no right to ask, but asked anyway, and I let him sit in silence for a second. The same silence he had left me in the morning of my wedding. Then I said, very carefully, I'm not saying no, but before anything else, you need to understand something. I'm not the daughter you ignore until your first option falls apart. He didn't interrupt, so I kept going. You let me walk down that aisle without you because I was easier to disappoint. You made me optional. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. You're right. It wasn't enough, not even close, but it was the first honest thing I'd heard from him in a long time. 2 days later, Colette called. First time since all of it. She opened soft, too soft. I miss you, Addie. I didn't answer that. Then, right on schedule, the real reason surfaced. Brett had lost everything. Mom and Dad needed help. Marcus and I were doing well now. Couldn't we just move on? Move on. I kept my voice level. Move on from what, exactly? Silence. So I said it for her. You scheduled your shower on my wedding day. You called people and made them choose you. You told Dad I'd understand because I'm used to disappointment. Her breathing changed. Then came excuses. Hormones, stress, pregnancy, fear. All of it circling the point without touching it. I let her finish. Then I said, I'm not trying to punish you, but I'm not going to call manipulation love anymore. She didn't speak, so I added, quieter this time. If you want a relationship with me, it starts with honesty. Not money, not access. Honesty. She hung up, and for the first time since all of this started, I realized I wasn't afraid of losing them anymore. She didn't call back for 3 weeks, and when she finally did, it sounded different. Quieter, less certain. But by then, I wasn't waiting for it anymore. Life didn't snap into place overnight. It didn't need to. It just kept moving. Marcus painted, I worked. We ate dinner at the same small table we'd always used, except now it didn't feel temporary anymore. It felt like something we had chosen. 6 months later, I was standing barefoot in the kitchen of a house that belonged to us. Not rented, not borrowed. Ours. It wasn't huge, not the kind of place my family would have bragged about, but it had light, real light. The kind Marcus always chased in his paintings. The kind that made everything feel honest. We'd turned the downstairs into a studio. Proper space, proper ventilation,
Walls that didn't need to be wiped down after every session. He'd finished the full series, every piece sold, more than we had ever imagined, and somehow that wasn't even the part that mattered most to me. I started getting my own work too. Not overnight success, but steady, real. A publisher reached out after seeing some of my illustrations at the gallery, offered me a contract, multiple books. I said yes. Of course I did. Harold came by every Sunday. Same car, same quiet knock. He'd bring a bottle of wine, never anything flashy, just good. We'd sit at the table together, the three of us, talking about nothing and everything at the same time. No pressure, no performance, just presence. One Sunday, Marcus raised his glass. "To the 7," he said. I smiled, because I knew exactly what he meant. 7 people at a wedding. 7 people who actually showed up. And every single one of them still in my life. In October, there was a knock at the door. Unexpected. I opened it and saw my father standing there. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically. Just less certain of himself. "I didn't come to ask for anything," he said immediately. I didn't answer. I just stepped aside. He walked in slowly, like he wasn't sure he belonged there. And maybe he didn't. Not yet. "I came to say I'm sorry," he said. No explanation, no defense. Just that. "I sat in a room eating sandwiches while you got married," he continued. "I'll regret that for the rest of my life." I watched him, really watched him. There was no performance this time. No deflection, just wait. "I know," I said. We stood there for a second. Then I gestured toward the kitchen. "Marcus just made coffee." He nodded, like that was more than he deserved. He walked through the house slowly, looking at everything. The studio. The light. The life we had built without him. In the hallway, he stopped in front of a painting. One of the early studies, 7 chairs filled, the rest empty. He didn't say anything, just stood there. Then he reached into the bag he had brought with him and pulled something out. A frame. Inside was a certificate. Old, slightly yellowed. My name on it. An art award I had won when I was younger. Something I had been proud of once. Something no one had ever hung up. "I found it in the attic," he said quietly. "It should have been on the wall." I took it from him. Didn't say thank you. Didn't say anything. Just held it. People ask me sometimes if I forgave them. I don't think it works like that, not all at once. Not in a single moment. It's not a switch. It's distance, clarity, and then, sometimes, small steps forward. A few weeks later, Colette sent a letter. Not a text, not a call. An actual letter. I opened it at the kitchen table. Marcus didn't ask what it said. He just stayed nearby. There was one sentence in it that mattered. Only one. She admitted it. Said she had chosen the date on purpose. Said she was afraid that if my wedding went well, she wouldn't be the center anymore. I read that line a few times, then folded the letter and put it in a drawer, not thrown away. Not displayed, just kept. For when I needed to remember that she had finally told the truth. My mother calls once a week now. She asks about my work, about Marcus, about the house. She doesn't ask for anything. And for the first time in a long time, that feels real. Colette and Brett are starting over. Smaller place, regular jobs, no spotlight. I hear she's good at what she does now. I hope she is. Some evenings, I stand on the back porch while the light fades. Marcus is inside working. I can hear the soft scrape of his tools through the open window. Harold's car pulls into the driveway like clockwork on Sundays. The lavender we planted has started to grow. Not perfectly, but steadily. 42 chairs, 7 people, 417 messages. I used to think those numbers meant something, like they measured what I lost.
but they don't. What matters is simpler than that. I stopped counting who didn't show up and started paying attention to who did. Self-respect doesn't come with a big moment. It comes quietly. The second you stop shrinking yourself to fit into places that were never meant for you. So I'll ask you this. If your phone had lit up like mine did that morning, would you have answered? Or would you have left it in the drawer